Hey, everybody. I'm S.A. Cosby. I want to thank you guys for joining me to talk with the great, incredible, fantastic author, Michael Connelly, about his brand new book, Resurrection Walk. So as I just said, I'm S.A. Cosby, crime writer from Southeastern Virginia. My most recent book was All the Sinners Bleed. Uh, and I am ecstatic to be here to speak with one of the true great living crime writers working today, Michael Connelly.
Hey, Sean. Hey, thanks for doing this. I'm very happy to be here to be field some questions from one of the great crime novelists working today. I really appreciate this. Got an opportunity. We got an opportunity to meet in person for the first time earlier this year, and it's been some fun.
Yeah, it was a great time in New York. I was so happy to meet you, and thank you for saying that. I appreciate it. I'll start with this. So I got the book last week, and I'm about halfway through it. Excuse me. And the thing that always fascinates me, whether it's a Mickey Heller book or a Harry Bosch book or a Ballard book, is you have this really unique insight into how to start the book, how to pull you in. And anybody who's in the audience who's an aspiring writer knows, there's nothing harder than the beginning of the book than the ending of the book. And I was just immediately drawn in from the early prologue with Mickey talking about getting a guy out of prison, and then right into the chapters with Bosch. So I was wondering for myself as a writer, um, is that something you do inherently, or does it just seem like that's the way the story naturally starts?
Yeah, I don't think I do anything inherently. I think it's all, working at craft and understanding what works, being a reader. And and then here's a tip for you, Sean. Plant the seed for your book in the last one. So, like in Desert Storm, the book I had come out last year, there's a moment where it's a Bosch and Ballard book, basically, and there's a moment where they know there's somebody in prison who's innocent, but because of the politics of the moment, the DA's office is going to move very slow to do anything about it. And so they tip the case to Mickey Haller, and that all takes place in maybe two or three pages. It's like one conversation between Ballard and Haller. But when I wrote that, I knew that's how I'm going to start the next book. It wouldn't be the whole book because it's kind of given away already. So it jumps forward, and I had an easy way of starting this book with Mickey getting a very big personal kind of moral victory and lesson about what's important to him, and that's that introduction that you're talking about, and then it goes from there. So it was kind of like a slingshot move started in the last book.
I love that. I like the idea of the Michael Connelly shared universe where Harry Bosch and Renee Ballard and Mickey Haller and all the other associate characters exist. I try to do something similar with my stuff. Everything I write so far has taken place in southeastern Virginia. So much like in real life here, everybody knows everybody. So everybody crosses paths. Um, Another thing I wanted to say, just on a personal level as a reader, there's something about Harry Bosch that I find so enthralling because he's not perfect. He's not, but he's also not the quintessential cliched lone wolf cop. There's something very human about him. And like I said, his famous, well, to me, famous quote, everybody counts and nobody counts. And I love that. I love that about him. When you were creating him, all these many years ago, um, that's not an age shot because I'm getting ARIP emails too. But when you first created him, was that something you wanted to do? Like I know you had been a reporter and you worked with the crime beat. Was there something that you saw that you wanted to emulate with Bosch?
Yeah, I mean, I was lucky. I kind of had a front stage pass or backstage pass. Got me into a lot of detective bureaus in my time as a reporter. And I wasn't a reporter who decided to write fiction. I wanted to do this first, and I went into journalism to get close to the kind of stuff I wanted to write about. So I kind of had a different take on it from the beginning. And so I was always looking for the moments that had no business being in a newspaper story, but I could use them someday down the line, and a lot of it was about the cost of doing this job and doing it well. And I'm not talking about the danger of being shot at or something. It's more like the what you take inside from what you see and how that can kind of become a cancer. That stuff was really interesting to me when I was a reporter and I saw it. I actually knew detectives who had committed suicide and things like that. And so I just kind of brought that forward when I was going to write about a detective. And I knew from the start, I mean, I didn't know from the start I'd be able to do a series. I'm sure you had this experience. All you want to do is get a book published, get your foot in the door and see what happens. And, but I knew and I loved reading series fiction, but I knew if I got the chance, that would be the through line of what I do with this character. It's not going to be him making brilliant deductions or using forensics and all that kind of stuff. All that stuff's important, but it's window dressing on the soul, and that's where I paid a lot of attention. And from that came things like Everybody Counts or Nobody Counts, and that wasn't even in my first book. But I'd read a lot of stuff from writers, especially like Raymond Chandler's essays on writing these kind of books about kind of needing a code, and I just didn't have it at least spoken in the first couple of books. But then I kind of came to the conclusion it's about being fair. If all cops were fair out there, we wouldn't have George Floyd's, we wouldn't have all the situations that we have across this country. And it just comes down to treat people the way you want to be treated. Everybody counts or nobody counts. And so when I kind of got that kind of clear in my head, this is how Harry Bosch would operate, then it kind of went from there.
Yeah, I get what you're saying about the characters having a code. My most recent book, before All Sinners Bleed, I wrote about outlaws, and even those guys, Bug from Blacktop Wasteland and Ike and Buddy Lee from Razor Blade Tears have a certain code. But when I started to write All the Sinners Bleed, which ironically the main character is named Titus, so I think that was a subconscious inspiration from Titus Welliver. But I had the same thought that I wanted him to be sort of this knight errant sort of, and his code is, the truth is always in season. That's the thing he preaches in the book. That's the thing he tells himself. That's the thing that he he kind of skewers himself on, because he hasn't always told the truth. And so I definitely get that. But like I said, with Harry, I love that about him. I love that, like you said, it's about being fair. It's about treating people the way you want to be treated, and it's about caring about people, the least of us. And I think Harry definitely does that in the books. Before we start taking questions, I wanted to speak a little bit about Mickey Heller, because he's in the book as well. I love, and again, this is a writing question from me to you, but I love how you don't even need sort of name tags to know who's talking in the books. Like Harry has a specific syntax, and then Mickey has a specific syntax. And if you took all the name tags off, or the attributive tags out of the book, you would still know who was talking. And again, just me asking as a writer, is that's something that you think is sort of natural once you get to know the character, or is that something that you felt like you had to really work at?
Well, that's a really nice compliment, because I'm not sure that happens. I am obviously, I know, hey, these guys are half brothers, share some DNA, have different philosophies about the justice system, but I really need to make them be different. And so I'm not always sure I'm doing that. But in this book, for example, I do a common trick, and Mickey Haller is in first person and Harry Bosch is in third person, so there can be no mistaking what's going on here. Is the way I felt about it. But yeah, you got to work at that in dialogue for sure. It's funny. I've been doing this for about 30 plus years. And I think I've just really kind of over the years, my evolution as a writer has really been to hone in on dialogue. And really, I think a person's words are, there's that thing, the eyes are a window to the soul. I think their words are the window to the soul. And that's what I really kind of concentrate on probably the most when I'm writing books now. Might not have been that way 20 years ago, but it is now.
No, I agree with you on that. I think dialogue for me is not just expository in a book, it's how you tell the story of the characters. And for me, reading the book, like as I'm halfway through it, so no spoilers, anybody, but the thing that I saw is there's this thing when Mickey and again, this is just me interpreting it. There's this thing when Mickey and Harry talk that Mickey fills in the silences from Harry. Like he fills in the spaces where Harry doesn't talk or he's giving him a look. There's a scene early on when he's driving him around and Mickey's assistant gets out the car and Harry's getting ready to take off and he doesn't take off immediately. And then Mickey's like, oh yeah, right. He comes and sits in the front. And again, having a brother, I know is like, I'm not driving you around by yourself. We're not doing that. So I love that about them, that you can see even in their Harry's middle age, but older guys, but they still have that brotherly bond. It's like, you got to sit up front. I'm not your chauffeur. So I love that. And again, it uses that sort of language or absence of language to tell you who's talking. They both have like a specific way of talking, a specific jargon they use. And as a writer, I love that. But as a reader, I really appreciate that. I'll have one more personal question, and then we'll take questions that were from the audience. They were submitted from the audience. But so you have Harry Bosch, this really interesting, really strong character. And you made a choice, and I heard you speak about this in New York, so I'm sorry if I'm reiterating it, but you made a choice early on to actually age Harry. And I remember reading an article with from Ed McBain years ago where he was talking about how he froze the ages of the cops in the 87 precinct. He had this comment, and, if I didn't do that, I have a bunch of doddering old men. But you made a choice to actually age Harry. Like he goes from, late 30s to early 40s to 60s and so on. And I was wondering, it's such a broad question, but I was wondering, what was you thinking behind that? I've heard your answer, but I'd love to hear it again.
Well, I mean, the main thing, well, by the way, you mentioned doddering old man. I guess Harry Bosch is a doddering old man now, but no, I mean, you can't see the future. I mean, how would I know way back when I made this decision in the early 90s that, in 2023, I still have the opportunity to explore things with this character. You can't see that. So I made a decision not knowing it would last this long. And I'm very fortunate that it has. But it was the reporter in me. I just thought to do a complete I was given this opportunity. I write about, one of the biggest cities in this country, and I was a reporter in this town, and I wanted to continue some of my journalism when I moved into writing fiction. Yeah, it's made up, but Harry Bosch doesn't exist. He's a made up character, but I want him to be in a landscape that is very accurate. And it was just part of that decision making process. And he should age, and he should see the city and the people he knows and the cases he works through eyes that are getting older, that have seen more, that have more wisdom. All these things kind of played into it. And as it's turned out, I've had a almost like an anthropological thing where I've been able to show a city over 32 years and counting, through the eyes of a guy who's aged 32 years. And I just don't think it would have been the same if I got to show a city over 32 years from a guy who never aged a day. It doesn't make sense to me. And, it makes sense for other writers. There's lots of people. So Sue Grafton that had a wonderful career. Her person never, aged and so forth. And it's just been, a choice you make, and then you live by the sword, you die by the sword. So now Harry's 73 years old. I said in the books he was born in 1950, and so I'm stuck with that. And it gives me opportunities and challenges. How do I keep a guy who's this year turned 73 valid? How do I keep him involved? And one way to do it in this book was for him to drive Mickey while he's doing some review of cases from prisoners who have been reaching out to Mickey saying, "I'm innocent." Mickey Haller taps Harry Bosch in this book to look through these letters, see if anything stands out that as possibly a case that we could tee up.
Yeah, no, I love that. You were talking about Los Angeles. Was born in the South in a small rural town of Virginia, but I've always been fascinated with Los Angeles, the city as a character, from Chandler to Ross McDonald to Robert Craze to your books, um, other writers that I like James Elroy and Jordan Harper. I think that LA is just one of the great. I always like to say I like to visit New York, but I want to experience LA. LA is one of the great cities in the world. And so seeing the way it's changed from Black Ice all the way down now to Resurrection Walk is truly a remarkable character, Titus Crown. And there are my agent and some folks want to know if I'm going to write another book with him, which I didn't intend, but I don't know. Now I'm kind of getting a bug to maybe write another book with him, and I'm trying to make that decision whether I'm going to age him or not. I don't know. I like having him pretty well fit, but I also like to see maybe how time affects him. So enough about me and my questions. I'm going to ask a couple questions from folks. These questions were submitted earlier, and I'm going to go pretty much in order. But first question, which is kind of a question I had: how did you get the idea of naming your main character after an unusual name, Hieronymus, the medieval painter? And that is question number one. So I was kind of curious about that as well.
It was kind of happenstance that when I was in college, I studied that painter, and his stuff sticks with you. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's world gone wrong
Yeah.
stuff. And so when I was I knew enough when I was writing the first Bosch book that, never miss a chance to say something about character. And, so even a name. So I was playing around with different names. And actually in the first draft of the first book, I called him Pierce. And that was that came out of an essay that Chandler wrote about piercing all veils of society with your detective. And then I remember these weird paintings I studied, probably like 12, 15 years before in college. And I went with that just because I thought it would work on two levels. One, some people will get it. I mean, I go back so far, there was no internet. So it wasn't like you could type in Hieronymus Bosch and find out where I got the name. It was either you knew about this guy or you'd have the question like, how did he get this name? And both things worked in terms of character and intrigue, so I went with that.
Yeah, I think names are really important. I named a character Beauregard Montage because I was directly challenging sort of that old Southern lost cause idea. Beauregard is usually a name that you hear a Confederate general have, and I gave it to my
Yeah.
African American getaway driver. So names carry power. I really believe that as a writer and as a reader. Same thing with Titus Crown from my last book. So that's a real good question. Here's another one, sort of piggybacks off something I asked earlier about creating a sort of differential syntax for the characters. But someone wanted to know, what is the biggest challenges of writing a novel with multiple character leads, or in this case, duo character leads, particularly those that you sort of have a similar investment in? How do you keep one from dominating the other? And that's a good question. I was interested with that as well, because both Mickey and Harry are great characters, powerful characters. They both take up a lot of space in the best way possible. So, what was some of your thought process behind that?
Well, there's a hint to it on the cover of the book. It says a Lincoln Lawyer novel. And because I told my publisher like, a year ago or whatever, when I started writing the book, yeah, it's a Lincoln Lawyer novel, but Harry Bosch will appear. And then Bosch got bigger and bigger in the book. So it's almost a split. I think there's more Haller in it than Bosch. And it is Haller's case, but Harry, had a growing significant part. I mean, basically my idea was that he'd be Mickey's driver and that they would have disputes and discuss cases while they were in the car. But then, Bosch becomes a little bit more important as the show goes on. I mean, as the book goes on. And so probably the biggest difficulty is balance and structure and how to do that. And I said before, one way of doing it, or the way I chose to do it, was to have one first person narration and one is third person, and that's helpful. But I was constantly in the writing of this book saying, like, how soon can I get back to the other character, that can create a momentum too in the reading process if you are constantly switching it up. And so I was aware of that as well.
Yeah, no, I love putting characters in cars and forcing them to talk. I think that's such a really good little cheat code when you're writing. I did that with Razorblade Tears, right? These two fathers that really don't like each other, but because we're in Virginia and it takes an hour to get anywhere, they're forced to talk because they got to ride together. I really like that. His other question I like here. Someone said, knowing that you like to golf, would you ever write a scene with Mickey or Harry on a golf course together? I thought that was a pretty cool question.
Probably not, but in the TV show, there's a scene where Harry's partner Edgar is at a driving range because they're actually watching. It's a little bit of a surveillance thing where they're watching the guy running the tractor that collects the balls. But Edgar
Mm-hmm.
says you're going to
Mm-hmm.
take up golf. It would like even you out a little bit. And and I just remember that Bosch says anything where you can smoke and drink while you're doing it is not a sport. And that's come back to haunt me with a lot of the people I play golf with.
I mean, I think you had a point there. And as somebody who's not a big golfer, I think you had a point. Another question here I thought was really cool. Um, was that what is the toughest thing about using real locations, both in your books and in the TV show? I know, for instance, for myself, my first book had a lot of real locations, and I decided to just make stuff up after that because copy.
I don't know if you can hear me. We had one a freeze there. I got the question. You froze there for a minute on my screen. I don't know if it's my Wi-Fi or whatever, but I don't find it difficult at all. But the one thing is, if you're going to have a scene of violence or maybe a homicide in a real place, you got to kind of clear it. I had this book called Angel's Flight where two people are killed on this train. And when I wrote that, I thought it was public transportation and I didn't need any kind of approval. So I killed two people on this thing. It turns out it's a privately owned deal. And the director of Angel's Flight showed up at one of my book signings and was very nice about it. But he kind of said, "You should ask for permission, pal." And I kind of learned my lesson from that. But I think I don't know. To me, I'm always thinking about the reading process, and so many people now will read a book and Google things. I just kind of like the idea that I'm using real places, and and then it doesn't hurt that when I end up going to some of these real restaurants, they thank me for putting them in the book, and I get a nice table or something. So there's that aspect that always helps out. So I don't really when it comes to the books, there's no difficulty at all. When it comes to the TV show, there's so much going on in terms of scheduling and locations, and you try to hit three different locations all in a kind of a tight circle. And if you can do that, that's fine. In the course of 9 seasons of Bosch, we only faked one restaurant. We just couldn't find a restaurant that fit in our day, our scheduled day. So we were filming in a building and we just set up on the roof a fake restaurant where the chief of police would meet somebody and you'd see the city behind them, and it looked legit, but it wasn't a real place. And so that was a long time ago, but it still bothers me that in the course of 88 episodes, there's one scene that is not real LA.
And I want to apologize if I froze. I live out in the middle of boondocks, so sometimes my signal comes in and out. Loved your appearances on Castle. Did you find that enjoyable? Your cameos on TV show Castle?
Yeah, it was fun. I'm not an actor, so I was probably pretty stiff, and I didn't write my lines. And one of the shows I was on, I was kind of mean to a new writer, which I would never be. Um, but it was a line designed to get a laugh, and I guess it did. The one thing that was really cool about it is Nathan, the guy who played Castle. They had a side room where they had a poker table set up, and we would all play poker with them, and we would talk and joke and all that stuff. And then we would go into the set where there's another poker table and we would film it. So it was a clever idea of making us kind of feel comfortable with Nathan and with holding cards and kind of passing things around. And I always thought that was like a really smart way of producing those scenes, because other than Nathan, we were all amateurs, when it came to acting.
Yeah, I love that show and I love those scenes. The late great Stephen J. Cannell, James Patterson, yourself, uh, great writers, being on TV and talking about writing is always something I'm interested in. And I've gotten to meet a couple of those great writers that I looked up to. So that's for me, that's really cool. I have two questions here that I'm gonna combine because they're kind of asking the same thing. One person asked, "What's going to happen with Harry Bosch in Desert Star? He has diagnosed with cancer." And then another person asked, "How many more Harry Bosch stories will there be?" And I remember from your interview at Thriller Fest where you said, you want to be the person to write the final Harry Bosch story. Is that something that you see maybe 10 years down the road? Like you said, Bosch is 73. He's fighting some illnesses. So is that something that you've given much thought to, or are you just really just enjoying the character where he's at right now, and that's not something that you really considered?
No, I mean, I think about it a lot. I'm a little bit younger than Harry, but obviously I've written most of my books are behind me. And so I'm not sure how much time I have left, but I do want to end the story. I don't, and end the story doesn't mean he dies, but I want it to be clear when the last Bosch book is out there. In Desert Star, yeah, he has some significant health issues. But what's nice about the internet is like a lot of people read that, and some doctors reached out to me and said, "Hey, I know a clinical trial that is attacking exactly what he has and showing good results." And so in this book, Harry's in a clinical trial, so maybe that will give him a few more years. We'll have to see.
Yeah, I love that part in the book too, where he's talking with Ballard and he kind of was going to let nature take its course, and then he's changed his mind. And I think it lends to me, it grips a sort of gravitas to Harry as a character because he feels like a real person, and I think that that really does help. Before I ask the next question, I had a chance to talk with Denzel Hayne last year at a writing conference at BoucherCon, and he had said about the ending the Kinsey Gennaro series way he did. That was really difficult, and it's one of those things you have to think about when you create a series. And the fact that Bosch is living what a tantamount is to a regular real life, I think is a really fascinating thing. Let's see, we got a couple more questions here. Let's see this one. Let's see. Somebody has this question, and I kind of got this as well. They wanted to know, how are you able to turn out so many quality books in such a short time? And I know that's a very broad question, but maybe you could talk a little bit about your process and then kind of give us an answer there.
Um, I mean, that's a great compliment. I hope they're good. I just think, you and we know what's going on here, that we've been given this amazing opportunity. And so it's like, don't drop the ball, respect it, cherish it, and raise the bar every time. I just don't want to ever, I don't read a lot of critical stuff anymore, but I just don't want anyone to think I mailed something in, that I didn't give it my best effort. And I have a year to write a book. That's, for me, that's plenty of time. I think because I was a newspaper reporter and I had deadlines every day, it ended up giving me a great work ethic when it comes to writing novels, where you basically have one deadline a year. So I don't blow that deadline. It's always out there, it's the goal line. And I just, again, it always comes back to, I can't believe I got to do this. I can't believe all the readers out there have given me this opportunity. So I can't, if I let them down, I'm letting myself down. And, that's what keeps me going. I can tell that's in
Yeah, I couldn't agree more
your
with that. I
books.
think,
You've raised the bar in your books every time. All three novels has gotten better and better, and that's how it should be. That's how we should all work.
well, thank you for that. I appreciate that. It's a very nice compliment. But I definitely feel the same way. I feel very privileged, very lucky, very blessed, however you want to describe it, to be able to do this for a living. And when I started out, I just wanted to get published, and I wanted like one person besides my mother to like my book. So I definitely take this
Yeah.
very seriously, and it means a lot. Got a couple more questions here. This one is pretty cool, and I'm interested again as a writer and as a reader. When you're working on a book, do you write every day, or are you more sporadic? Do you have like a set time that you're writing when you're working on a book? And tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, my cycle is that I start on the Monday after Thanksgiving to write a book with the goal of turning it in by July 1st. And to do that, I pretty much have to write every day. I don't write like long hours every day, but I just write in the early morning every day. I try to get out before it's light out and write to, at least lunchtime. And I have some stuff going on in LA. I think people think I'm more involved in these TV shows than I am, but I do keep my hand in it, and I have to look at scripts and things like that. And so I just try to get to the afternoon, and in the afternoon I might be doing something else, based, TV stuff. But if I'm like writing by like 5:30 or 6, and I go to 11:30 or 12, I know I'll have a book actually before July 1st. I'll have a book by June 1st, and you fall into that kind of rhythm. I've been doing this for a long time, and so I kind of know I'll make it. And there'll be days I take off, maybe because of we're on a trip or a holiday or something. I won't say I religiously never miss a day of writing, but I religiously don't want to miss a day of writing, and I try not to.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. When I'm working on a book, I do try to write every day. But what I've learned, and I'm sure you can attest to this too, is that you have to refill that cup. So you have to do stuff. You have to go to dinner. You have to hang out with friends. You have to go golfing, or in my case, you have to play pool. You have to get new experiences so you can bring those to the characters. And so there are times where you're like, yeah, I'm gonna go have dinner with some friends, but I'll make sure I come back the next day and write, and maybe use some of that in the book. I definitely agree with that. I like that the Thanksgiving thing. I like that. I may have to steal that. There's a couple questions here, so I'm going to combine them a little bit. We all have, well, most of us have watched the Bosch series with Titus Welliver, and forgive me if I'm pronouncing his last name incorrectly. And for me, he is Bosch. He's the guy. Same thing with the Lincoln Lawyer, with Matthew McConaughey and um, when you were first approached about turning these into either TV shows or movies, when you were first approached by being optioned, were there other actors that you had in mind? Because like I said, with Titus, he seems like perfect casting. He's just incredible.
Yeah, I mean, he was the name I submitted, so I was thinking about him. So this was like, I don't know, 10 or 11, 10
Oh,
or
wow.
11 years ago. Um, Amazon was very new at this. They hadn't even done a 1 hour drama. They had like two comedies. And so it was it wasn't like a big studio yet. And so there's very few people involved in making pretty significant decisions. And I'm happy we ended up making the right ones at that time. But yeah, the most important decision was who's going to play Harry Bosch. And, it's a big transition from books where you're inside someone's head to a script and a TV show where you're never inside someone's head. And so, we tapped a seasoned showrunner named Eric Overmeyer, who had worked on like Homicide: Life on the Streets, a lot of David Simon stuff, and with The Wire. And he said, like, hands down, this we live or die on this choice, and so let's make it right. And we talked to dozens and dozens of actors and auditions and all that stuff. And we wanted to talk to Titus, but he was making a film in Hong Kong, so we didn't think we were going to get to him. And Amazon had given us 6 weeks to find Harry Bosch, and we finally Titus was coming back from Hong Kong, and it was the last weekend, our last weekend before we had to submit. This is our Harry Bosch, and he came in. He was jet lagged, but he had gotten the sides or the script, as they call them, sides, on the plane from Hong Kong, and he came in and did a scene that was in the pilot, and he just nailed it, and he got the job on the spot. And the reason we wanted him is because of his way of projecting. He can project inner turmoil, yeah,
Mhm.
very well. And
Yeah,
that
he's
was
excellent.
that was the key thing that Harry's seen a lot. He hides it, but it's there behind his eyes. And we were looking for somebody who could show that, and that ended up being Titus.
That's such a really great point that he's seen so much, and you can see it in his face. You can see it in Titus's performance. Another question here: are there any plans for Mickey Haller to cross paths with Renee Ballard? A Bosch Haller and Ballard team up would be incredible. One of the folks said. I was wondering, is there any thoughts of bringing Mickey? I know he's a defense attorney, the Lincoln lawyer. He's famous for that. But is there any thought of maybe bringing him and Renee crossing paths at any time?
It's unlikely, Haller is on Netflix. I mean, Lincoln Lawyer is on Netflix, and Bosch is on Amazon, and it would probably take an act of Congress to have these competitors agree to one of these Connelly Universe joint operations. So I don't think that will ever happen. We are at Amazon. We're developing a Ballard show, and if that goes forward, and we'll know pretty soon, I think. If that goes forward, then yes, there'll be definitely intermingling of Bosch characters and Ballard characters, because that will be fun to do. That will be like right out of my books. So I'm excited
Yeah,
about that, and I think it looks good.
that sounds great. I would love to see that. I think Ballard is such a strong. Decide this is not a question, but I think you do such a good job with writing believable female characters. It's something I strive to do. I don't ever want my female characters to be like arm candy for the main protagonist. And definitely with Ballard, she is not anybody's arm candy. She's tough, she's smart, but at the same time, she feels like a real woman. Sometimes writers will write a quote unquote woman character, but it's just a man they've put a woman's name on. They don't feel like women. And with Renee, with other characters over the years, you've done really a good job with that. So I guess that's not really a question. I guess more of a comment, which I
Well,
hate getting those when we're at panels. But
well, I, you know, I'm very lucky with Ballard because she's a single source inspiration. She's based on a real detective who runs the cold case squad at LAPD. And she kind of is sitting on my shoulder when I write. I send her stuff all the time, and she sends me back all the time great criticisms or suggestions. Like, I wouldn't do it that way, and it gets all the way down to, like, I wouldn't say that, I'd say this. And so I'm getting the female input is immediate in everything I'm writing when it comes to Ballard. So I'm very lucky to have that.
Yeah, I mean, she's like a powerful character in her own right. I love that. I love the way her and Harry have this really good friendship slash working relationship slash just partner type relationship. Here's another question. We got time for a few more questions. Somebody wanted to know if you have any plans to bring back Kiz Ryder in any books. They feel like they need some closure there. So,
Yeah, closure. Yeah, it's weird. I'm not perfect at this, and just that question reminds me that I kind of let her drop off the radar. And when we last saw her, she had a position of authority in the LAPD, and actually was helpful to Harry in a case. And And then for some reason, I never went back to her. So I should actually look into that. It's been a while, so it'd be fun to see where she's at now.
Yeah, definitely. A couple more questions. We're getting close to the end here. Um, Someone wanted to know, um, how content were you with the Bosch series as as it went on and as it reached its conclusion? And were you happy with the overall product? I know it was incredibly successful. Like I said, personally, I loved it. And like I said, I thought Titus was a perfect Harry Bosch. But how did it feel seeing it sort of, go through its life cycle, I guess?
Well, I mean, it was interesting because in the seventh season, we knew it was the end, and then Freevee came and said, "We want to make we want to continue our platform." So he's still going. There's something like 88. Yeah, I think it's 88 episodes out there where we have a green light for a third season of Bosch Legacy. So it's going to go on. And to me, it's just astonishing what that it's gone on for so long. And it's kind of like hopefully like my books where we're not mailing it in. And I think the season is running right now. I think the final two episodes come out on Friday. I think that's the best season we've made of all nine.
Wow.
I love what we've done, and to have a show, I just consider it one show, even though it's seven seasons of Bosch and the rest is called Bosch Legacy. To me, it's one show, and to have the ninth season be the best in my estimation is just an amazing thing. And I get credit for that. People are telling me this is the best season. But I wrote one episode with Titus, and it's just a lot of other people dedicated to the characters and what we're trying to do, and not ever mailing it in. So I'm very proud of that. It's hard to describe my feelings about it because who would have ever thought it would have lasted as long? And I'm told that Harry Bosch, Titus Welver, is now the longest running character on streaming. We got
Wow.
88. We got 88 episodes, and we're as soon as the actor strikes over, we're going to do 10 more. So hopefully
Wow.
more after that. We'll see.
Yeah, it's an incredible achievement, an incredible universe you created in both the books and in the TV shows. Got one last question, and someone wanted to know, and I get this question sometimes too, so I'm interested in your answer. Was there anything you learned about yourself as a writer or as a person when you finished writing Resurrection Walk, which is out now? Or are there anything that surprised you during the process?
Well, I think like if you continue with Titus and you get into writing series, which I think you should. I love that character. You come to this point where and it's acute with legal thrillers because these all end up in the same thing. It's like the UFC fighting cage. You go into a courtroom at the end of these books, so it can be repetitive. Like how many times can you end up the last 100 pages or something in a courtroom where a jury's going to say yes or no, guilty or not guilty? It gets repetitive, and that's a trap that I've discovered since this is like the seventh Lincoln lawyer book. So going into it, I knew I had to come up with some kind of pivot, something different. And
Mm-hmm.
maybe it's subtle. It's a legal thing. It's a habeas case. So it's in front of a judge. And my advisors, Lincoln Lawyer is also based on real lawyers, the work of real lawyers. And one of them said to me, in a habeas case where you're trying to get someone out of prison, it's a flip flop. It turns everything we think about in the justice system upside down. You're supposed to be innocent till proven guilty. That's the bedrock of the system. But in a habeas case, you're guilty till you're proven innocent. It's completely opposite. So when he told me that, this idea you're guilty till proven innocent, I said, okay, that's the next book, and that's something different. And it gave me an opportunity for Mickey to kind of address where he is in the world and to pivot. And so I Desert Star was my last book. It was the end of a contract. I thought when I started writing that it might be my last book, but something happened. I got energized, and so I did. I signed another book contract, so there'll be at least a few more. but the resurrection walk is refers to um, getting someone out of prison, resurrecting them from the dead, because when you're in prison, your life is over. And so that's the obvious meaning of the title, but it was also kind of my resurrection walk where I realized I got to do more. Again, respect the opportunity you've been given, and write some more good books. So, on a personal level, that's what I got out of this book. That Mickey's pivoting, I'm pivoting, and I look forward to whatever I end up writing next.
Wow. Thank you for what you said about Titus Crown. It's funny, I didn't plan on making him a series. I write standalones mostly. But the response people have gotten to him has been really extraordinary. So maybe news flash or breaking news here on Barnes Noble, I might be in the works of writing another Titus book. So
Good.
well, I want to thank Michael Connelly. When we met in New York, you told me don't call you Mr. Connelly, but I'm
Yeah.
a Southerner, so
Come
it
on.
feels like I have to. But I want to thank Michael for allowing me to be a part of this. Resurrection Walk is out right now, folks. It's an incredible. It's still at the high level that Michael set for himself. Folks that got signed copies through the program, your copy should arrive in 8 to 10 business days. But again, I want to thank everybody at Barnes Noble. Thank Michael Connelly for his time. Get this book. It's incredible. As a reader, it's fascinating. As a writer, it's like watching a master perform at its highest level. So please get this book. Michael, thank you so much. I can't wait to see you again in person.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for doing this, and thanks to Barnes and Noble for holding these. It's always fun. I've been trying to eye the comments, and people are here from all over, and that is amazing support of storytellers. So really appreciate it. And
Yes, I'd like to reiterate that. Thank you guys so much. And we're going to say goodbye. Again, thank you guys so much. Please get Resurrection Walk. Thank you guys for being here. Bye-bye.
bye. Thank you.